It's time for the Film Crickets with Jay Fortier and Chris Martineau.
Hey friends, my name is Jay Fortier, along with my good friend
Chris Martineau.
All right, how you doing, buddy?
All right, what's happening, my man?
Doing great.
Good.
All right, so we are the Film Crickets, and we do a podcast, and basically we look at movies, one movie per week, and we look at a classic film in our generation back to, let's say, I don't know, let's go from 1980 to about 99, something at least 20 years or older that we want to see if it holds up today. So we will do a couple of things. We will sometimes occasionally bring what we call a passion project. Our first two episodes were passion projects just because we were so passionate about these types of films that I brought one to the table. He brought one to the table. And then we do a random thing. And what that is we actually a year that is randomly generated. And then I roll a 10-sided dice. And how that works is the random year pops up. And let's say it's, for instance, this past week came up as 1983, and the dice came up as a number 5. Well, that happens to be the number 5 film of 1983, and it's Wargames. So that's tonight's episode. And at the end of this episode, before we are through, we are going to randomly generate a year, and we're going to roll that dice and see exactly what movie we're going to be watching the week after. So,
and it's really exciting for me because it forces, I don't know about the people that are listening, but it forces me to watch movies that I either haven't seen and I want to see if they hold up, or never had the impetus to see at any point and see if it holds up. So I like the fact that I might be forced to watch a really sucky film or a really great film and you don't know what's coming. Or maybe it's a film you think sucks and then actually ends up being good, and vice versa. Like Pumpkinhead, for instance. Remember Pumpkinhead?
That was actually a fun movie.
We rented Pumpkinhead and we're like, oh, look at that. Like, well, how is this going to be good? But then we watch it and we're waiting for it to suck, and it didn't suck. It was actually really good. So that's the hopes of this podcast, right? Or that we're trying to force ourselves to see stuff that may or may not be good. So we rolled a 5. The 5th highest grossing movie of 1983 was Wargames. So Wargames, starring Matthew Broderick and Alan Sheedy and John Wood and a bunch of other people. Directed by John Badham. Do you know what else he directed, Jason?
Nope.
Saturday Night Fever.
Wow.
No shit. I never would have guessed that at all. So we got Saturday Night Fever. He also, not a dance movie, not a happy movie. Saturday Night Fever. Also, Whose Life?
Very dark.
Very dark movie. Next to that, Whose Life Is It Anyway? Which is a film starring Richard Dreyfuss, who has cancer and wants to be euthanized. Okay, so we went from Saturday Night Fever to that. And then Blue Thunder, because what's better than a movie about an attack helicopter? And also Short Circuit, which shouldn't surprise anybody because it's kind of the same movie as War Games. It's kind of this paranoia, technology bit. So anyway, so that was 1983, came in 5th. Let's give you a quick overview and then we're going to go into the movie. David Lightman is a slacker/hacker who is smart but lazy and gets wrapped up in the computing craze of the 1980s. After trying to, quote, steal a new game from a database not in his state, he inadvertently breaks into the NORAD computer system and almost starts World War III. If you pitch that movie to anybody, most people these days would say, well, that's kind of nonsense. But back in the 80s. So back in the 80s when personal computing was getting to be big, and people were worried about whether or not computers were going to take over our lives. Your parents have had that conversation back in the 80s, right? Or like during Thanksgiving when the conversation would go to whatever and be like, oh, everything's on computers now. I have vivid memories of that. So they had a lot of like computers are taking over. And guess what? They took over.
Yeah, well, if you don't believe what he's saying, go to Walmart. 90% of them are automatic tellers, or not tellers, but automatic cashiers that you can just go through and put your own stuff in, and there's no humans there, and it's really sad.
Well, it's sad, but I don't want to deal with the Walmart people anyway, so that's fine. I try to walk in, to walk out. That place depresses me. Oh,
yes.
God, it makes me feel awful about myself and the universe.
By the way, our latest sponsor is Walmart. I just want to thank them.
Yeah, no, why would you want to diss somebody that can give you money because you suck?
Unfortunately, I forgot to tell you that there are.
No,
there are.
I mean, I love Walmart and all those people in their pajamas that shop there. All right, so the pajama people are out in force. Oh God! I walk in, I feel like a dirtbag. I really do. It's like, oh God, this is terrible.
Pajama People is our movie for next
Pajama
week.
People. Pajama People strike again. So anyway, so that's the general idea. And so we have this 80s movie. We got Matthew Broderick again, who plays kind of a lovable slacker. Do you like Matthew Broderick in this? Is there any reason to not like Matthew Broderick?
No, I saw it in the theater.
I did not.
He's got a really great tone to his voice. So when he's talking, he just sucks you right in. It's really, really great. And that's what led to him being Ferris Bueller. I mean, it's the same exact thing. He gets this, I don't know, these tones that he uses just really are.
You want to pay attention to what he's saying. And he's not unlike Jeff Spicoli. He's an absolute rule breaker because he can't be bothered with school. But he's not an asshole. And He broke into a highly secure military network, but wasn't doing it on purpose. So he's kind of ignorant, but you can't not like him.
Of course, you like him so much, and they obviously set that up perfectly to where you see him, you hear him talk, you want to hang out with the guy.
Yeah, basically, and he had that look, man. I had that look where you got the pants, and then you got a t-shirt, and then you got the button down open. I rock that.
For a second there, I was like, yeah, we all like that, pants and shirts.
Whenever we're not naked, most people really like that about me. Most of the time, I'm just letting it whip around and stuff. No, but I rock that look for a long time, like the unbuttoned shirt. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's hard to explain.
I got you.
So anyway, so this movie hits on two main themes of the early 80s, which is burgeoning technology and it running our lives, and Cold War paranoia that the Soviet Union is going to nuke us at any moment. So that's where we are right now. And I would like to give you some perspective here. This came out in 83. The Cuban Missile Crisis was in 1962. That's 20 years, which seems like a long time, but this movie was 40 years ago from now. So it wasn't that far removed from the Cuban Missile Crisis when we almost died. And the wall comes down, which separates East and West Germany in 1991, ending communism. Soviet Union goes back to being Russia and its bloc states. And so we're right in the middle of it. So one thing I want to talk about with this movie that's very important to get off of Matthew Broderick is this Cold War, the themes of Cold War paranoia. And this is part of the reason why I think we have to talk about it, because we have to talk about whether or not this movie holds up. There is no more Cold War paranoia. It's gonzo. The Russians are corrupt and trying to hack our election system and all that stuff. But the imminent threat of nuclear war is gonzo. It's still there. Trust me. The threats aren't in Russia anymore. They're in other countries, which I won't mention. Intelligence is pointing that way. But there's no imminent threat of nuclear holocaust from missile bombardment for a lot of reasons. Non-proliferation agreements and all kinds of agreements and treaties and so on and so forth. But this was not the day of that. This was the day of mutually assured destruction, where we were just rampantly making as many missiles as possible, right? And so there's a lot of paranoia about this movie. So we have SAC, which is Strategic Air Command. So we see a lot of the military people that are watching the war games, right? So Matthew Broderick has hacked into the computer system, right? And he's seeing the war games, and he's making the war game happen because he broke into the computer system and he thought he was running a fake game, but he's really hacked into NORAD, and he's making this computer run a war game that no one knows if it's a game or if it's real, or if it's a game or if it's real. So getting back to the Cold War paranoia, NORAD is always watching. So Jay, tell me what you think about the set inside NORAD with all the screens. Dynamite set.
Right? I mean, it's enormous. It's like the size of a warehouse.
Right. And that's pretty much, I don't know what it looks like, but you can imagine, even if that weren't true, you could buy into it. Because why? We're always watching. We got to keep our eye on them Ruskies at all times, right? So NORAD's job is to always watch. If you have a DEFCON status, so part of this movie is DEFCON, Defense Condition 1. So you go from DEFCON 5, which is peace, to DEFCON 1, which is all-out war. And you're always at a DEFCON status. And that brings about this idea that someone is always monitoring the DEFCON status. It's never like, let's check. it's always right there. It's number 4, number 5, number 3. If you get to DEFCON 1, as Dabney Coleman, who rears his ugly head again in a movie from the 80s, playing a different character, kinda. We've got this paranoia that we're always watching because at any moment we're going to get nuked by the Russians or by the Soviets, right? The Whopper, which I know. It's hard to say because it's a hamburger. The Whopper, the War Operations, I forget what the Whopper, WPR. That's the computer that Matthew Broderick, David Letterman hacks into inadvertently, thinking it was just a gaming system, and sets up this whole war game that's going to bring about the end of the world. The Whopper is able to watch 24/7. That's the Whopper's job. They actually say in the beginning of the movie that what if the Russians launch a surprise attack?
Mm-hmm.
There are no surprise attacks. Okay. Like, that's what they're worried about. Like, that's what we were. Jay, I'm asking you, in the 80s, were you afraid of a surprise attack from the Soviets?
No.
Well, I mean, were you afraid of, could you possibly imagine that the 80s?
Yeah, no, okay. Yeah, no, I of course. But
not you personally,
the reason I say no is because I cared more about video games.
Fair enough.
Because the people who walk around paranoid about that, they live a miserable life. So I always chose not to.
Well, it's a miserable life, but it's something that we were constantly bombarded with, right?
Of course.
For whatever reason, through the media, through the government, through whatever. Who knows what they were saying about America back in the day in the Soviet Union? They were about to launch a surprise attack. So we were always. They actually said, what if the Soviets launch a surprise attack and our guys can't turn the keys to launch the missiles? Surprise attack? That to me is that level of paranoia. You're always walking around waiting for bombs to drop. That's the theme that we're talking about. And the other thing you got to remember here, when you look at the war room, it's always the continent of North America and the Soviet Union, right? So we're going to say Soviet Union. And those are the two countries that are up on the screen. As to say there are no other state or non-state aggressors anywhere in the world that has their target on North America. Like there are always state and non-state aggressors who are targeting democracy. That's just the way it goes, man. And so the fact that they're just focusing on the Soviet Union is what is going on in the time. All we were worried about are the Russians. What are they going to do next? And I got to tell you, there's no such thing as a surprise attack because everybody's always watching everybody. So there are no surprise attacks. We know where everything is all the time. And there's only one last thing. You know how everything was in the Air Force? All the military people were Air Force. And all the threats were coming. We're always worried about the missiles. Yeah, they brought up the submarines, but the submarines launch missiles. So we're in a day and age where the Soviet threat that we were so paranoid about, that the computers are controlling, the Soviet threat is coming from the sky. And any moment, something's going to drop from the sky because that's the nuclear age. No one's worried about a boots-on-ground invasion of North America or our boots-on-ground invasion of the Soviet Union. It's just not going to work. So all the military people are Air Force, and they're all worried about things coming from up here, which that's a complete surprise. Like, because you're always, think about it. You're walking around going, what's going to land on me next? Rather than looking over the horizon, seeing the boots coming in. Now, what movie works on a boots on ground invasion of the United States?
Well, that would be the first movie to garner the PG-13 rating, and that would be Red Dawn.
Yep, absolutely. So is that feasible?
No. I mean, not really, because, the thing is what they did, and not to go down a Red Dawn path, but...
No, go for it. It's the same era.
They did they hurried the hell up at the beginning, did a real fast summary that somehow said that NATO collapsed. And I forget what they said. So I'm not going to sit there and try to say it verbatim, but that's what, it was some sort of, they needed some way to get you to go, oh, so, you know what I mean? Now, it's more believable now that these things just flew into our airspace and started dropping men.
It's called the MacGuffin. Like, how do you get the story rolling, right? It's called the MacGuffin of the movie. So in this case, the MacGuffin was NATO failing. And in our case, the MacGuffin is this kid wants to break into a computer system to play games, but in fact, almost launches World War III or whatever it is. We have in this movie this infrastructure of intelligence gathering. Is it good that people are watching us? Yes, but it's bad because people are always watching us, right? So the Soviets are always watching us. We're always watching the Soviets. Everyone's not trusting anybody else when really no one, I don't think, really wants to annihilate anybody else. It's governments. It's not people. But the people always kind of get wrapped up in the whole game. It's the people that are the collateral, while these other people are inside their concrete bunkers pushing the buttons and turning the keys.
Right. We have no control, no say, nothing. So
those are my opening takes of just the Cold War paranoia. Is that way off base?
No, because that was absolute. In fact, let's go to another movie.
Okay.
There was a made-for-TV film that just freaked the shit out of people, and that was The Day After.
Yep. Not The Day After Tomorrow, which is horrible.
The movie was called The Day After.
The Day After, yeah. And people were freaked out because it showed people getting vaporized.
I didn't see it. It was one of those things that they kept warning your parents to say, don't let your children watch this movie. Now, I'm in the kitchen doing my homework. The bombs are being launched and I'm peeking my head and I'm hearing no. Like, no.
And then how many years later till you saw Friday the 13th? So I don't want to hear it.
I probably saw Friday the 13th 3 years prior to that. Totally different story. But like, yeah, oh no, it's okay you can watch a madman who's undead just walking around with a thing, but no, not to watch this bomb. But listen, you can say that was, maybe over the top on their part, but it also freaked out Ronald Reagan to where I think he came up with the Star Wars program not too long after.
Yeah, because he wanted to scare the Russians or the Soviets into thinking, well, if you launch a missile, ICBMs have to go up into space and come back down. And so he was going to have lasers that shot from space. And so it was, again, an arms race thing. I think it was bullshit. It never was going to happen. But because our technology is better than the Soviet technology, he could say, well, if you launch them, we'll blow them out of the sky and then we'll just launch missiles at you. And so therefore, there won't be this mutually assured destruction between the both of us. We can nab all your missiles, but we're going to bombard you with thousands of our uranium and plutonium bombs and shit. So lasers can't do that, by the way. Just so we're clear. Like, you can't have a space-based laser that's powerful enough to, it's nonsense, but okay. Whatever.
Yeah, we don't have to go there. But it's just, anyway. I'm saying this is proving further that the paranoia was alive and well.
Oh, sure. And we didn't like them Russians. Rocky IV. We don't like them Russians. Why? Because they're evil. Well, okay.
But, okay. At least, if nothing else, the theme, whether it's, Rocky IV or this one, eventually does say, do you really want to do this? Meaning,
oh, sure.
In Rocky IV, they're not sitting there saying, do you really want to nuke? But the idea behind that whole thing is people are still people, and we are not our leaders. A little kid going to school in Russia has nothing to do with Putin. You know what I mean? Nope. Other than the fact that he has to say, oh yeah, he's my favorite. Little kid that probably wants to hang out with his friends and do things that all the American kids do.
Eventually get really hammered and put on YouTube videos of them doing stupid things in cars. I'm sorry. Fail videos are always from Russia, just so you know, but...
No, but but I'm saying the point.
Yeah.
Well, even in this one, we end up meeting a guy, Professor Falcon, who basically says to the head of NORAD, right? Who's the southern guy that we see in every film from the 80s?
Oh, he's the best. I'd piss on a spark plug if I thought of doing it good. I have some things to say about him, but yes, Berenger.
He's in everything. His name's Berenger?
I think, well, no, not the actor, but yeah, he's head of SAC at NORAD is a guy, Berenger.
Forgive me for forgetting the point, but as far as what he said, but do you remember when he's basically climbing the stairs and he says, why would they want to? And so do you remember that better than I do? It says
basically, is the enemy prepared to destroy you? And he says, it seems like it. And he says, are you prepared to destroy the enemy? And he says, I think I've made myself clear. And then Falcon says, well, then don't do it. You both know you can annihilate each other. And that's the point of this warfare, is that even if it's a simulation, you have to make the decisions based on humanity, not based on what the numbers tell you to do. And so at the end of the day, you're not going to, even if you are at war, you're not going to launch an assault which guarantees an assault so large that's going to guarantee that you're going to strike just as hard back and annihilate both sides. They're not going to do that. But you have to convince these people, the people that are in charge. And here's the rub on this. The people that are in charge he's not stupid. There's no reason to think that the judgment of the Southern guy, Berenger, forget his name, the actor's name. There's no reason to think he can't make an educated decision. He's not an ignorant redneck. He's got military experience. He's been in these situations before. He knows how to make snap decisions that will cost lives, and he has no problem doing it. And he's just going to do what he thinks he should do given the situation. The trouble is, the situation is all out global thermonuclear war. You know what I mean? And we're not talking about scrambling bombers and fighters. We're talking about launching thousands of missiles, all with megaton payloads, nuclear warheads. It kind of ups the game a little bit. And the thing that what I think is very interesting, and this is one of my themes here and that you've touched upon. May I go into this theme, Jason? It's the humanity of warfare. So basically, let's think of I'm going to go from the beginning of the movie and then to the end that you just mentioned with Falcon. Now, Falcon, just so we know, people that are listen and never seen it, you should really watch Wargames if you haven't seen Wargames. I guess I kind of tipped my hand, but Falcon is the guy that wrote the original computer code that runs the NORAD weapon systems Whopper that Matthew Broderick broke into. So he's now been taken out of retirement, which we'll get to maybe why he's been taken out of retirement. And now he's at NORAD trying to convince them that all of this is just a game. It's all just a simulation. The Russians aren't going to launch thousands of missiles at us because we're going to launch thousands of missiles at them. But the whole idea is this idea of humanity of warfare. Because the fighting is no longer hand-to-hand, eye-to-eye combat. This isn't World War II anymore. This is Cold War stuff. They talk about boots on the ground a little bit, but it's mostly bombers, jets, missiles, and submarines that launch missiles. We're dealing with people in locked cells pushing buttons to enact massive amounts of death and carnage across the landscape. And so what Dabney Coleman wants to do, who is a computer engineer, is he wants to take the humanity out of the decision-making to launch nuclear weapons. He wants to give that to a computer who can make a cold, calculated decision as to whether or not they should launch war. And what's, I think, striking is that Berenger, who is a big Southern guy, like you said, with a lot of shit on his chest in terms of ribbons and medals.
Barry Corbin.
Barry Corbin's the actor. He's been in everything. Mm-hmm. He's real good.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of ribbons on his chest. And when Dabney Coleman says, I want to take the men out of the loop. I want the computer to make all the decisions. The military man, the man whose job it is to decide whether or not to launch attacks on other countries says, basically, I have faith in my men to make the correct decision. So what's strange is that the military guy who's in charge of basically executing people from afar has faith in what his men can do, the human side of it. Whereas Dabney Coleman, the computer engineers, don't understand that part, which is why they're engineers.
It's based on the fact that at the beginning, there's a simulation that is testing two people who happen to work for the nuclear facility where they're going to sit there. And if the countdown happens and the codes are right, everything's lining up perfectly, then two people who are on opposite sides of the room have to turn the key at the right time. And one guy wouldn't turn the key because he couldn't do it. Now that obviously sets the premise to get the computer to run the show. And that's how we end up with the whole, after Matthew Broderick hacks in, everybody flips out and thinks, even though he's playing a game, he's actually just sitting. I do love the contrast that goes back and forth between how everybody's flipping out, looking at the screens at, oh my God, we got some heading towards Las Vegas and Seattle. Oh no. And then you see him and Ali Sheedy chilling out in his room, drinking Tab or whatever the frick it is. Tab. Ugh.
Get in that Diet Coke. What are you
Hey,
gonna do?
I want to drink a tab. I want to drink a tab and then taste it for 3 straight days.
Terrible. It was terrible.
Saccharin. So that was, but I loved the contrast because they're just chilling, being teenagers, having a good time. They had no idea that was happening. I thought that was pretty great.
It is fun, but you also bring up a good point with that opening scene is that the people in that silo, think about what it is. The people in that silo, they both have to turn the key at the same time. And that's a redundancy that happens a lot. They have that in airplanes. Have you ever been in an airplane? There's like 1,000 switches in the cockpit. They don't need all those switches. They're all redundancy. So if one goes wrong, they can just go to the next one. Like everything on an airplane is double. And same thing in the military. They always do it in like everything's redundant. So you got these two guys that are going to both turn the key. They both have to turn the key. And one of them says, you got to turn the key, sir. He's like, well, get somebody on the phone. I want to make sure I'm not killing 25 million people by accident. And he says, the phones are out, which is exactly what would happen in a war situation. Of course, the phones are out. You have to follow orders. It doesn't matter what it is. So if you're in the military, you don't think about that stuff. You go, the order is turn the key. I'm going to turn the key. I don't know what's going on out there because I'm in a silo. So they're isolated from humanity, deciding on what to do. The guy that actually has a conscience says, I can't turn the key to launch the missiles. Now it happens to be a drill. That's the whole theme of the movie. They're going through the motions, but at some point when you're going through the motions of following, because that's what computers do. Computers just follow orders. They go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And when you throw in that humanity, that's decision making. It's not coming to a conclusion. It's decision making. I want to know I'm doing the right thing, which computers don't do. But that's the point of the Whopper. And that's the point of what we learned to be called Joshua, which is Stephen Falken's name for this program, is that people can have to learn humanity. Computers don't know humanity. But here we have a computer that's been programmed to learn humanity, and that warfare, or at least tactical nuclear warfare, is a pointless endeavor, and you should just quit. Don't even bother. Do something and kill each other different ways, basically. All right. So, hey, look, you know what I want to go on to? That was a very heady stuff, right? Can we get into the stuff that's unrealistic about the movie? Not sure. Comic book guy unrealistic, but unrealistic. Okay. First time we see Matthew Broderick, where is he?
Playing a video game.
What time?
Right before school.
Right before school. At an arcade at 9:20. It was 9:25 in the morning. That's what the clock said behind the counter.
Okay, so why don't we just say during school? Because I don't know any schools that start after 9 a.m.
Right. So he's playing video games before the arcade is hopping on a school day at 9:25 in the morning. And who does he meet in the arcade?
Another little kid.
Well, he's 17. This kid's
I know about. Right, that's why I mean. Well, you know what? Matthew Broderick's not very tall, so let's just say another little kid.
I know, good point. He's got a 9-year-old coming in before school. What? So Matthew Broderick's going to be late for school, but so is this little kid that's supposed to be in school with zero parental supervision, and he's not his brother. And then the next time we see him is he's running to school at 9:40 in the morning, coming from the arcade that's serving Coca-Cola and pizza at 9:30 in the morning, serving a bunch of kids.
Hey, they got to make a buck.
I'm like, what? Wait a minute. How does that work? I got to tell you, man, if you are suspected of breaking into a highly secure computer system that's based in NORAD, if the FBI comes for you, do you think they're going to take you to NORAD? That thing you were trying to break into? Yeah, we're going to get you closer to that. No, absolutely. Like by the way, where is Lightman? He's in Seattle. Where's NORAD? It's in Colorado. There's a lot of geographic nonsense that's happening in this movie. The FBI picks him up in Seattle. Next thing you know, he's in Colorado. There's this whole questioning bit where they question him. What are you doing here? What'd you do, kid? So on and so forth. And they eventually arrest him. Or, by the way, you get arrested by the FBI. You're not going to hold you in the infirmary. They're not going to let you see the big war room board. The thing you're trying to break into? Yeah, here it is. Look, they're not going to leave you alone in an office. I don't give a shit what happens. They're going to put you in a cell.
Oh, and by the way,
yeah,
Dabney Coleman, who brought him into the office, was not even an FBI agent. So
no, he's just an engineer. Yep. He just worked there. Yeah, he's not military. He's got clearance.
I have a crazy thing, too. They went to DEF CON 4.
Yep.
So literally yesterday, they were concerned that it was a surprise nuke attack. In fact, to the point where it made the news.
Yep.
What tour are they holding at the facility?
Yeah.
Who's holding a tour during a major crisis?
Yeah, major crisis, possible nuclear threat and harassing. And they're not going to let civilians just walk around NORAD.
Right.
It's not happening. So geographically, this movie doesn't make sense. So we go from Seattle to Colorado in a car, maybe. Matthew Broderick breaks out of NORAD by hooking on with this tour group on a bus. And then he asks for money to get a plane ticket from a minor to go to Oregon. So he flies to Oregon in and at this point, it's saying the end of the world's going to happen in 18 hours. He gets a plane to Oregon, then gets on a bus to a ferry to get out to an island where Stephen Falken is supposedly hiding out. Then it's nighttime. Then Falken, they try to convince him to go save the world, and eventually they do. And he gets on a helicopter, and they fly from Oregon to Colorado. Guess what? Montana's in the way of those two states, and Montana's big. And Colorado is like southeast of there. It's like going towards Arizona. You're talking 1,000 miles. And they're there. Hey, we're here. It's like, what?
My other thing that I was wondering about, because this made zero sense. Okay, so you got Stephen Falken, right? Falken. Because it's so badly when I say Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, me too.
So Stephen Falken says they try to convince him to come with them and tell the people at NORAD that really it's just the computer, because nobody believed Matthew Broderick.
Right.
When Matthew Broderick goes to NORAD, he's saying, I just basically wanted to hack into this video game system. I accidentally hacked into yours. There were some games on here like chess and checkers and tic-tac-toe and all that stuff. So, and nobody's like, yeah, sure. And they think he's got outside help. Anyways, so after he breaks out, he goes and finds this guy because he really wants, somebody to prove his innocence. Now, here's the part that I didn't understand. They're like, forget it. He doesn't want to help us. So they're walking around looking, and okay, he's on a little island, and they realize, what kind of guy doesn't have an island? I mean, doesn't have a boat if he lives on an island. It makes no damn sense. And they think they're going to die soon because the Americans are going to launch a nuke based on the fact that this fake simulation is fooling everybody.
Yep.
So they're like, oh, well, our lives are over. Let's just make it. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a helicopter shows up with a spotlight, and basically they start running, and it's chasing them.
Yep.
It finally corners these people, these two kids. It gets lower. It lands on the ground. Then, and only then, does he use the speaker device to say, it's only me.
Yeah, it's okay.
He could have done this. He could have done this about 5 minutes ago before they put themselves in danger, running around scared to death. If he was on their side, he could have said, guys, it's all right.
It's okay.
It's me, because he had a British accent. Yeah. So it's like, you know what I mean? I just thought that was nuts. I was like, why did he just scare the shit out of them first?
I guess you would call that unnecessary tension. Yeah, you could have. Well, a lot of things you suspend the window of disbelief a little bit because they got to do stuff, but it's like, yeah, you could have it's kind of dumb. I'm glad you brought that up because again, we get to I'm just talking about themes here, and this last theme is mutually assured destruction from the Cold War and nuclear weapons destroying both sides, and this idea of extinction that eventually our species will run its course. The dinosaur he brings up, so that they get to the island and they're trying to convince him, look, you got to come help us. And he doesn't want to help. And he doesn't want to help them because he doesn't value really life anymore. And they don't really get into it too sappy, which I really like about it, that you have to infer. But the reason that Stephen Hawking,
yeah, there you go.
That's your fault. The reason that Stephen Falken is on this island is because he wrote the programming, and then the Department of Defense kind of made him disappear. They pay his pension. They bought him an island, and now he can be by himself. Why? He had a wife and kid. And we think they both died, I guess, at the same time. But his son's name was Joshua. And Joshua is the code to get into the computer. So the computer is often called, what is Joshua doing now, right? Rather than the Whopper. Whopper is cold and calculated. Joshua is actually a name. So you can identify with a person named Joshua, not Whopper or Big Mac or McNuggets or whatever. So,
before you go on, I just want to say, I wonder if they wrote that in there, hoping that Burger King would be their sponsor for the film.
McDonald's shows up in the movie. Is there a Wargames McDonald's Happy Meal? I don't think so. So anyway, he's on an island because he's got nothing. He lost the things that he loved. And so he humbly goes in retirement and realizes that we all die eventually anyway. And that's his coping mechanism for losing his entire family. He uses an analogy with the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs had a great run, but eventually they're going to just, fizzle out. And that's what nature does. Sometimes nature just calls it quits. To which Matthew Broderick promptly says, that's bullshit. You just want to quit because, your family died and you don't care about anything after Joshua died. And that's what turns him around to humanity, which I think is really neat because he's not wrong. He's absolutely not wrong. We do all die. All species go extinct for whatever reason, random events like asteroids, or just from plumbing the resources way too much, and we simply can't sustain ourselves anymore. But all species, and we're going to have a good run, but eventually we're not going to be here anymore. And these are tough themes, but the question is, when do you want to quit? And what Falcon kind of says is that, well, I guess there's still some good left somewhere, right? All the bad that goes wrong isn't the people, it's the people that are in charge. It's not the people themselves. And so let's kind of keep this thing going as long as we can, which I think is really neat.
Ali Sheedy, by the way, adds to that and she says, I'm 17, my life's just begun. And it takes moments like that sometimes to reach the stubborn,
sure,
to change how they're feeling.
Well, I hate to say it, but it's the whole mask argument. Like, I don't want to wear a mask. I'm not a sheep. Right. Well, okay. But you don't want to wear a mask. You don't care if you get sick. You just can't think. You can think about yourself to a point, but you do have to take everybody into account, not just your neighbors, like other countries. Like you've got to take everybody into account. And I don't want to sound like it's just like we're all in this together, whether you like it or not, So it's like you have to think of other people. So Falcon's argument is crap because it's selfish. You can't just because your life sucks, you have to die too. Well, that's not cool.
Well, he was defeated, depressed,
yep,
and was no longer going to make any efforts in life.
Right.
And by the time these kids showed up, he just wasn't yet ready to turn that corner.
Yep.
They needed to say a few more things and leave him sulking in it for a little while.
Yeah, sure. Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, that's okay. It's whatever you got to do, right? It's a level of honesty. I guess it's this level of honesty. Like, you just got to tell people like it is. Here's what I think, and now you have to stew on it. Because Ali Sheedy and Matthew Broderick could have just said, "Okay, well, you're not going to help us," and just left. But they could. Well, you know what? When's the last time you cared about anything? So they can say what they like, and it's up to him how he wants to react. Does he want to sulk? Does he want to think about it? Does he want to kick him out? So it's an interesting moment, and there's a lot of these guys didn't write much. The people that wrote this movie didn't write a lot of other stuff, which is too bad because the writing is good. It's got a lot of, like we said, the shit that's unrealistic is pretty unrealistic, and you kind of got to go with it to make the story go. But so let's wrap it up. I think in the last theme here is that eventually what happens is they're in the war room. The final thing is that Joshua, the program, wants to win the game, and the Americans ride out a simulated Russian missile attack, and they realize that it's not an attack. Right before they're about to launch their missiles, it's not an attack. And so they stand down the missiles. They say it's just a simulation. It's just the computers. The Russians don't have anything in the air. They're not trying to kill us with a surprise attack. And then the computer decides, well, I have to win the game because that's my programming, because there's no humanity. So I'm just going to do what the program says, just like people following orders. And it searches for the launch codes, because now they've removed the people that turn the keys out of the silos, left it all up to the computers, and the computers are going with their prime objective, which is to win the game. And the whole point is that Joshua is not AI, but it's a program that has been made to learn from its mistakes. And so Matthew Broderick saves the day and Stephen Falcon saves the day by telling Joshua, the computer program, before you launch the codes, play tic-tac-toe. And I got to tell you, by yourself, like play against yourself and realize that no one can ever win tic-tac-toe. So it goes through all these permutations of tic-tac-toe. And after that, before it launches the missiles, it runs through all the permutations of global thermonuclear war from all sides and all avenues and all agencies, and realize that we look at the death counts and the kill ratios and the destruction, that nobody wins. And so the whole idea is that sometimes it's better not to play the game.
Right.
It's pointless. No one.
Yeah, I have it actually written. Strange game. The only way to win is not to play.
Right.
And by the way, I do want to say at the beginning, you're introduced to the voice when Matthew Broderick is talking to the, well, not AI, but Joshua, whatever you want to call it. When he's talking to it by typing the words and Joshua is responding with text, he says to Ali Sheedy, do you want to hear it talk?
Yeah.
So he turns on a device that's reading the text, vocalizing through that. And it's just funny that the same exact voice is used in NORAD, even though it was a totally separate thing.
And Dabney Coleman's desk, by the way. And there's no speaker anywhere.
Right. So, but what they wanted to do by that point is to give the computer a little more of a soul, or at least more of life, but that it was alive. So the fact that even though there's zero chance or very little chance that anyone could have actually heard it, it's just a matter of, it was just kind of funny the way it was. But by the way, I love the voice that they chose.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say at the beginning, when Joshua calls Matthew Broderick back spontaneously, it's almost like a haunted voice. Like it's a demon voice. And then by the end, it's almost innocent, but it's the same voice.
Right.
That's really cool.
The way they put it there. It was just outstanding.
I agree with you. So in a nutshell, that's Wargames. It's got a lot of goofy 80s stuff in it, but it's not nostalgic. It's got, man, the computer tech is nutty. You got, we're past the day of the USB. Everything's in the cloud now. But before the cloud, we had USBs. And before that, we had CDs. And before that, we had 3.5-inch discs. And before that, we had 5.5-inch floppies. And this movie has the gargantuan 10-inch floppy disk. You got to hold the shit with two hands and put in your disk drive. Like, shit, I had a Commodore 64 and I didn't have a disk drive that big. Like, mine was rocking the 5.5-inch floppy, not the 10-inch. Holy shit, it was like a vinyl record. Throwing it in the computer.
It's almost like an Aerosmith song.
Yeah, it in my computer. A lot of nutty technology.
Question: how is it that they're flipping out when they see these launches that are heading towards America?
Yep.
How is it that none of their technology could actually sense a live missile somewhere? Meaning, were there no satellites that could visually see this other than the computerized image that they were seeing on the screen? Did they have no other resources? How is it that nobody seems to see a tangible thing, which obviously there wasn't anything?
Yep.
So, how is it that they would think they would only rely on this one computer screen showing images?
I'm with you that that's a loophole, and it is a weak part of the movie. When there are threats from inbound fighters that are on the computer, Behringer scrambles F-16s out of Alaska to try to intercept, to get visual. And the jets are like, we don't have visual, we don't have radar. And then in a scene after, somebody says, yeah, but we heard they have stealth something now. So it's a lot of paranoia. I'm like, well, maybe they have jets, but they have radar blocking technology that we don't know about yet. That does not explain an inbound of 1,000 missiles coming at you.
Nobody anywhere could see them visually, is all I'm saying.
You're right. The trouble with that is that once they're inbound, you got 6 minutes. So you don't see them until they come and re-enter the atmosphere. I don't know about the satellite information.
I'm throwing it out there. Not that you had to have the information or you had to have the answer. It was just more like, so other than this computer screen that's visually showing these lines that are representing missiles heading towards America, that's that there's no other source. It was just what
I would say I will say that's a weak part in the movie. But I will also say, in mildly in its defense, maybe they're trying to show that all these people they're at NORAD, they're deep inside of a mountain in concrete and uranium lining, you know what I mean, to protect them from nuclear attack. And all they have is the information that's coming in, cut off from everything else. They can only make decisions on what they see in front of them. I'm not saying it's good. That is a weak point, because you can see trails of missiles coming thugh the atmosphere because they're going to be red hot, and there's going to be they're going to have a trail like a meteorite coming at you.
Right.
It's not like when we dropped Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those weren't coming in from space. They were coming in from airplanes. So you wouldn't see a big stream of smoke coming in through the atmosphere. So now it is time for Final Judgment.
It's time now for Final Judgment. Are you ready to rubber stamp this bitch? Here's the Final Judgment.
All right, thanks for that. So it's time for Final Judgment. The point of the podcast is to determine whether or not this movie holds up to the test of time. So, Jay?
So I think it does hold up, because even though the tech is always going to be outdated in the future.
Can I bring up one thing before you go further with that? You're right. The tech is going to, I always bring up, Marvel movies are a huge franchise, $1 billion franchise. And one of the first lines from the first Marvel movie, Iron Man, is, hey, don't throw it up. I'm going to put this on MySpace.
Right. I don't want to see this on your MySpace page.
On your MySpace.
No, it's true though. Anything is always going to be dated. There's just zero chance. Mm-hmm. We look at old films from the 40s. When in 1980 something, we would look at a movie from the 40s and go, what the hell? What do you mean they weren't watching television? Or, they didn't have cable? What's wrong with those people?
Get the crank going. Operator, give me 765 Boston.
So that's always going to happen. So I think people need to just sort of, when they realize it's from the 80s or from another time, they just need to deal with the fact that tech is going. And by the way, even though it's a tech-based film, but it doesn't drown you.
No.
I think in tech. So you're not sitting there going, oh God, oh, look at this. What a mistake. No, it just basically used it to get to the ultimate point of the film, which was nuclear war and how we all need to not be so quick to pull a trigger and that whole thing. And humanity, trust in humanity, not just the machine, the whole 9 yards. So I think, and the one thing I wrote that I think sums it up for me is the message is timeless.
Yep, I agree.
Regardless of what era it came from, we can sit there and relate to the fact that, right now in our current state of 2020, there's a lot of people that can say bad things about China, but do you really hate the Chinese citizens? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's not, you can't sit there and say, oh, I want all of them dead. It's really about peace and not start wars and not kill millions.
Right.
So, I just think it's, like I said, the message is timeless. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something like that will never grow old. And they did a great job, by the way, as far as either creating tension or humor. And Matthew Broderick was the perfect choice.
Yep, I agree.
So absolutely stands up.
All right, so I'm going to agree with you. I think it also stands up the test of time for the same reasons. I think that you can watch it as a study in Cold War history if you want to, because I think it nails it on a lot of issues. I agree with you, the tech is there. But again, if you look at it from a standpoint of, you can watch some movie about World War II, and it's kind of the same thing. You're not going to go, well, this doesn't make any sense because it's 1996. I'm going to watch something about World War II. That's just what happened back in the day. So in terms of a historical piece, it works if you really want to nail Cold War, but it also nails this timeless idea of humanity. Unfortunately, there will always be aggressive states. And unfortunately, we might have to deal with warring nations, possibly. We try to avoid it as much as possible. But we want to make sure that if that does happen, then A, we're doing it for the right reasons, and B, we are as informed as possible when we make those really horrible decisions that we have to make. The threat of nuclear war in terms of ballistic missiles is pretty low, but there's always aggression somewhere, usually directed at either Western nations or in between Eastern nations. But again, at the end of the day, people really don't have a problem most of the time, well, with other people. Unfortunately, not in this country sometimes, but that's unfortunate. But, I always think this guy Josh Gates, and he's a world traveler. He's on the Travel Channel and on Discovery Channel, and he does Expedition Unknown, and he's known for going around the world. And he wrote a book about his travels, and basically what it says is that people all over the world, he's been to almost every country, and he said people all over the world are basically nice. If they'll help you out if you need help, most of the time, you shouldn't sell a country short just because it's that country. And you could say the same thing about the Soviet Union in the 80s, or you can talk about Iranians now, or Iraqis now, or the Chinese now, or Southern people. Sorry, people from Alabama. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Billy Joel went to Russia and did a whole documentary / movie of him performing there and meeting the people. He wasn't just performing and going into a hotel and leaving. He was on the streets with cameras and meeting teenagers and young people and old people. And it was just, and stuff like that was proving to people at home that aren't on that trip that get to see the video and go, wow, they like rock and roll, and I like rock and roll. It's simplicity, but it's stuff like that that really can tug at people's hearts and realize maybe we don't really want them dead, because, and the ultimate thing about this film, one pulls the trigger, so does the other, and then you're dead just as much as the other guy. So it's just,
and when you're dealing with nuclear weapons, it's an even larger scale, because you're dealing with not only wiping out two cultures, but you're talking about thousands of years of poisoned environment, and it's cuckoo nuts.
Well, that's why, that's why they always try to keep crazies from actually developing keep an eye on technology. Oh, I'm sorry, Iran, you're getting a little close there. That type of thing.
Well, unfortunately, they're supported by the North Koreans, so that's a problem.
All right. So we do our best to try to, but see, I think ultimately if both sides have a semi brain, I know it's a stretch, but I'm saying sometimes if they both have it, the chances are they won't use it.
And we are the world. We are the people.
We are the children.
And on that note, I think we can recommend that you should watch the movie. It definitely holds up the test of time. And that is the goal of this podcast. So, Jason, tell me about the next movie.
All right. Hey, friends, this is Jay and Chris about a week later. Here's the deal. Last week, we thought we were going to go a specific direction in our show. And after hearing it and thinking about it, and we decided to change it up a little bit, because it's just, we found that when we're doing the random stuff, we're going to keep doing the random selections. But the problem is we were narrowing it too much. We needed to broaden it out. And the thing was, we rolled the die that we said we were going to do, a 10-sided die, thinking, okay, here's my initial thought. Just because movies were top 10 doesn't mean they were good. People might have just flocked to it because they thought it was good. And then I actually took a look at a lot of the lists that were top 10 per year. They're pretty damn good. To the point, not that we don't want to see a good movie, but here's the problem. If they're all phenomenal, then it's just like a worship session.
Yeah. Yep. And people are, particularly of our age now, looking back at the 80s, even movies that may have kind of sucked back in the day, now they're cult classics. So even if if a movie's in the top 10 from the early 80s, it's either A, really good, or B, kind of did sort of okay then, but now because it's the 80s and everybody likes 80s stuff that's our age, suddenly it's got this big following. So it already answers the question, does it hold up to the test of time? It does, because whether or not everybody now likes it, the opinion on it has changed over time. So what was that movie that we, quote, randomly selected last time? Tell me this thing that could have flopped that we weren't sure was going to hold. What was the movie?
The Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, what a piece of shit that movie is. So yeah, it doesn't make, to Jay's point, it doesn't make for it. We tried to stay true to the randomness. We let the dice decide the movie, and the movie we got was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And there's literally nothing wrong you can say. I even told Jay, hey, watch that documentary about the kids that make the shot for shot remake of Raiders, and all it does is kind of prove the point that the movie's timeless. You can do a shitty version of it, and people like that shot for shot remake just because some kids did it over the longest period of time. And those that haven't seen it, you got to see. It's called Raiders ! It's on Amazon. Watch it if you like Raiders. But yeah, we in a good conscience we couldn't watch Raiders and try to tell us if.
It is on Amazon, but if you have Netflix, you can watch it for free because it's on Amazon right now. It's rental, just so you know.
Oh, I forgot. You're right. It's free on Netflix and rented on Amazon. You're right. I forgot.
Because I was like, oh, man, I don't want to spend money on this. No, it's just I just watched the original. So anyways, so we decided to come up with another, we wanted to broaden it out. So we're going to do it, same set of years from 1999 back to 1980 or, however when you put it. And we're expanding up into the top 50 instead of the top 10. So and it's just like I said, we're not looking for bad movies. We're looking for maybe movies that are good, maybe, but have flaws. So like we can sit there and say, or it could be a bad one, but I'm saying it's not our goal to necessarily have bad ones. But I just think an absolute gem will be a fucking snooze fest.
Right. Because we could do Empire Strikes Back, for Christ's sake. So, I mean.
Right. Exactly. So it's like, wow, that was perfect. It was good. You know what I mean? Over and over. What did you like about it? Everything.
We turned to Chris Farley when he would interview famous people. Remember that time when you saw Luke say that Darth Vader was his father? That was awesome. That was awesome.
So, all right. So anyways, let's, you're going to do the random year.
80. What was it? What was the end date? 19 what? 89, 90?
99.
99?
Yeah.
Okay, 99.
Because I figured anything like 20 years or older, it could be not holding up.
All right, I got 1986.
All right. And the number I have is 39. The number 39, let me take a look. You got 1986 box
So the
office.
39th highest grossing film in 1986.
Okay, I'm going to say I have zero fucking idea what this movie is. It's called Heartburn.
What is it? Heartburn?
Yeah, I've never fucking heard of it.
It's Heartburn. Nope. Hold on a minute.
Okay. Oh, well, let's get Jack
check
Nicholson.
out Heartburn.
Let's get Jack Nicholson.
Really?
It says she's a magazine writer who gives up her career for love and family. He's a playboy, newspaper columnist.
And Jack Nicholson.
Oh, see, I couldn't.
It's a Mike Nichols film. Meryl Streep, Jeff Daniels, Maureen Stapleton, Stockard Channing, Richard Mazer, Catherine O'Hara. Everybody's in. Milos Forman's in this.
Well,
but no one saw it.
This could be one of those.
I'm in.
Yeah, this could be an unsung gem.
All right.
You know that
I've never heard of this movie. Meryl Streep. Okay. I'm ready. All right. So we have selected, and the next movie is going to be Heartburn. It got Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 50.
Oh, then I'm lukewarm about it. All right, man. So,
yeah, well, we'll find out, won't we? All right.
Listen, everybody who listened today and has been listening, we'd like to thank you very much. We have the Film Crickets Facebook page. All you have to do is basically look up on Facebook and you enter the Film Crickets and you can look us up. And if you want to maybe leave comments or post little messages or whatever, we'll be glad to communicate with you. I think you're doing a Twitter. Are you setting up a Twitter?
Yep. We have the Twitter page rolling up. Yep, on Film Crickets. I'm pretty sure that's what the name is. I don't think anybody owns it. And then the YouTube channel, of course, which where you're hearing this.
So we're looking forward to interacting with you as well. So thank you so much if you listen, and we hope you really enjoy it. And maybe one day, if you actually do hear ads, that's a good thing because that means the show is actually taking off.
That'd be nice.
So that's what we could all be thankful for. All right, thank you, folks. Have a great week. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, Later. Thanks, Jay. All right, guys. Bye.